Hey everybody, welcome to the ZI Mailbag. This is Alex again, and I'll be your host. Normally I like to have some stuff to say before we get started, but I'm a little pressed for time this morning, so I'm just going to jump right into questions. This first one is from Quinn. I believe it was via email. The question is, what do you think happens if Link jumps off the ledge but you don't make him call his bird in the Skyward Sword flight demo? Actually, I did see a couple people try this out, and it turns out that one of his other bird riding friends will just swoop down and pick him up and take him back to wherever he jumped off of. You don't get hurt. I don't think you lose health. He just takes you straight back. And I'm not quite sure what happens if he skydives and tries to go down to the surface and doesn't pull out his parachute, but that's definitely something I'll be testing out when I play the game for myself. I'm going to try to get some video footage of this to sort of play in the background, but I may not find it, but I'll do my best. This next question is from David. It's like this. So people have been speculating about how Link got his tunic. Since Ocarina of Time, it's been from the Kokiri Forest. However, because Skyward Sword definitely comes before Ocarina of Time, how do you think Link gets his tunic? Well, in the E3 2011 and Comic-Con trailers, we see a scene where Link looks like he's putting on his tunic, and he's standing before what looks like the Skyloft Night School principal, who we also saw in the flight demo. And we know that Link's school that he goes to, his boarding school, is a school for knights. So he's in training to become a knight, which is why you see him wielding his sword in the bird riding demo. And we also see at the beginning of the bird riding demo that there are characters flying on birds in the background who also wear tunics kind of like Link's. I think there's one with a green one with a red one with a blue one. So I get the impression that his tunic is a knight's tunic, and it's the standard garb for anyone training to be a knight. I don't know how this is going to play into Ocarina of Time. They may just be running with this story for Skyward Sword and letting Ocarina of Time's sort of origin story stand on its own. But maybe we'll see that touched on in the game. Alright, this next question is from A Shadow Link. How do you guys feel about Miyamoto judging the future of Star Fox and the sales of a remake on a system that hasn't been doing very well? Obviously referring to Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS. I'm not quite sure his comments were totally serious. He sort of implied, or a Nintendo rep, it might have been a Nintendo rep, sort of implied that it was a joke and he was just trying to pressure them to make them really good. But that would be kind of silly, since remakes tend, in the first place, not to sell too well, as we're seeing with Ocarina of Time 3D. It's doing well, but it's not, breaking sales records or anything. And, the 3DS, with its slow adoption rate and the fact that there's only, pretty much the big titles are only remakes right now, yeah, that really wouldn't be very fair. But I think if people, really embrace Star Fox 64 3D, then that's going to say good things about where the series is going to go from there. So we'll kind of see what happens next. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of Miyamoto's quote. This next question is from Dizzy123. I think that's how you say it. It's DZZY123. How do you feel about Ghirahim so far? Do you like the direction Nintendo is taking with him? Well, I think he's kind of a creepy character. A lot creepier than Ganondorf, honestly. But that may be because we've encountered Ganondorf so many times that he's kind of lost his edge. I love that he's a sword wielder, which I think is really great, especially considering this game's focus on swordplay mechanics. It'll make him really stand out among most of the recurring Zelda villains. I also like that you kind of see him multiple times throughout the game. Your first boss encounter with him is really early on in the first dungeon. So I think that's really cool, and it's got a lot of potential to make him seem like more of a looming threat throughout the entire game, whereas Ganondorf usually, you'll see him maybe once or twice, and then he appears at the very end. It's especially prevalent with Twilight Princess, where you didn't even really see him until the end. But yeah, I like Ghirahim so far. I like the idea of his character and how his motives are kind of mysterious compared to, say, Ganondorf's or Vati's, who made their goals very clear in the beginning. So it'll be interesting to see how he pans out. This next question is from Jesse. Where did Majora's Mask come from? Could it have come from Hyrule? And there was sort of a long explanation that went along with this question about, could we see the origins of Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword? If you look at Majora's Mask, it's not 100% clear where the mask comes from. Obviously, the Happy Mask salesman has it in Hyrule, but we also see that he's capable of going back and forth between Termina and Hyrule. And there's Majora's Mask symbols all over Termina. So, it's not 100% clear. But in the Japanese version, we sort of had some translators look it over, and they found that when he introduces the Majora's Mask, he talks about our ancestors having sealed it away when he introduces it to Link. So that kind of suggests that perhaps it was people from Hyrule that wound up sealing it away. Of course, it's also possible that the our ancestors in Japanese just refers to people who came before them in general. But it could actually be talking about people from Hyrule who, are their ancestors. But I don't think Majora's Mask is going to be touched on in Skyward Sword at all. I think it's going to really just focus on the Master Sword and some of the backstory elements of Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Next question from Mike73. Out of the many items Link has used from all the games, outside of, swords and shields and tunics and stuff, which do you think was the most important or significant, and from which game? Well, honestly, the item that I think is most significant is in almost every game. It's the bow and arrow. And the reason why I say the bow and arrow is because, first of all, it's in most of the games. I think, aside from the bombs, it's the most recurring item. Actually, aside from bombs and boomerang. Boomerang was absent in, I think, only Adventure of Link and Majora's Mask. Of course, in Majora's Mask, it was part of the Zora Mask. But the bow's been in most of the games, and it's usually, if not essential, then really helpful in fighting the final boss. I know most of the Ganon encounters you need to use either the silver arrows or the light arrows, and Vati's always weak against the arrows. So it's really one of the most essential items, and also one of the most iconic, I think, because it's just one of those major fantasy weapons that, every fantasy hero, if he doesn't use it, he at least encounters someone who uses one. So I think that would be my choice. Of course, there's more Zelda-y items like the hookshot and stuff like that, but in terms of importance, it's definitely the bow for me. Next question is from Lucas. How do you think Link will have the Triforce of Courage in Skyward Sword, if at all? Do you think he will have to collect it like in Adventure of Link and Wind Waker, or do you think he will simply be born with it like in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess? That's a really interesting question. I don't actually think he'll have it. We haven't seen the crest on his hand in any of the screenshots so far, so he's definitely not born with it. Definitely not like in Twilight Princess, anyway. And the way Aonuma talks about the role of the Triforce in this game, it sounds like it's not going to be split up, so Link probably won't get it at all. I think probably what we're going to see in terms of the Triforce is that it's hidden and people are searching for it. For example, perhaps Ghirahim's tribe or group is searching for it, and that's why they've taken over the surface world. And it may be that a group like the group that fled and hid up in Skyloft is trying to protect it. That would be a pretty different role from other games where either Ganon has it already, or you're actively fighting Ganon to stop him from getting it. But yeah, I don't think Link will have it. And final question for today from Carlos. Do you really think Skyward Sword will be the best Zelda game ever? I think from what I've played so far, in terms of gameplay at least, all signs point to it being the most satisfying Zelda game to play, especially in terms of the core mechanics. I loved Ocarina of Time, I love the original Zelda, but I don't think that they're quite as developed, I don't think they're quite as perfected as what we're seeing in Skyward Sword. There's definitely this sense that the sword is really important, and even all your items are really important. And there's been a lot of thought and time really put into making them work the way that they work, that I think a lot of people are going to find something that they really enjoy. It could be that a lot of people get put off by Motion Plus. I know a lot of people don't necessarily, that's not necessarily part of their gaming repertoire is motion. They like buttons and D-pads and stuff like that. So those kinds of people may struggle with it and it may not really resonate with them. But I think for me, in terms of play control, it's the best that I've played. We have yet to see how exploration and actual game content will actually pan out. I know demos don't really do a good job of showing a lot of content, and it's all subject to change in the final game. So I can't really say for sure whether things like the content and bosses and things will really shine. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because the gameplay is just so good that I can't imagine any of the other stuff having any less polish. But we'll see. We'll see. If it really doesn't have as much content as Miyamoto and Bill Treaton and Aonuma have suggested, I think it's probably going to be my favorite. Well, anyway, that's all the questions for today. I have a few backlogged, perhaps for next week. But what I'd really like to see in terms of questions for the next one is questions about the latest footage that we showed. So the item upgrades trailer that we saw last week. Those 4+ minutes of footage from Nintendo's 3DS conference and the new trailer. So feel free to ask me anything. You can ask about that new character, ask about the new items that we've seen, ask about new places and environments and enemies and all that sort of stuff, and the Game Informer information that we've had revealed. But yeah, shoot me an email at alex@zeldainformer.com or leave a comment with any of the questions that you might want me to answer, and I will see you guys next Sunday.